There's a long stretch of back road on the outskirts of Salinas, California, called Old Stage Road. If you travel the long, winding road during the day, you'll see miles and miles of mountainside, groups of ranch homes, and cows grazing the lush green fields. But at night, you're likely to see things that are much, much different. I grew up in Salinas, California. I had a friend, Dean, who ironically would later be my husband, who lived on Old Stage Road. There are no streetlights, and it has very steep turns and large trees alongside it. Dean lived in a small house situated on a large piece of family-owned property, with multiple living quarters and a large party room dubbed the Rumpus Room. There were huge parties there on most holidays, and a lot of random days too, but the Halloween parties there were epic. A few months ago I found one of my old journals, and as I skimmed its pages I came across my entry from November 2nd, 2005, and was propelled into a memory I hadn't thought about in a very long time. I'll let my 21-year-old self tell you what happened to me and my friend Allison on Halloween night in 2005 on Old Stage Road. November 2nd, 2005. So something crazy happened on Halloween, and I think I'm nuts. But Allison saw it too, so maybe we both are. I don't know. We were on our way to Dean's party, and we were like maybe 10 houses away when we heard screaming. Like loud, scary screaming. We had the music up loud too, but we could still hear it. We turned it off, and I rolled my window down to see if I could tell where it was coming from. I thought maybe someone had crashed or something since it happens out there all the time. But when my window was down, the screaming sounded the same. It's hard to explain, but it was like it was just as loud inside the truck as it was outside. We looked at each other and Allison gunned it towards Dean's ranch. All of a sudden, it was silent, and at the same time, we saw a woman right in front of us, in the middle of the road. She was so freaking scary. For a second, I thought it had to be someone in costume. She had her head down, and her stringy gray and black hair hung down on her shoulders and over her face, just like in the movies, so I thought it wasn't real. Allison slammed on her brakes, but we kept going forward, and when we were about to hit her, she snapped her head up and her mouth open wide, and the screaming started again. Her eyes were black, and she was looking right at us. We were screaming too, thinking we were going to hit this lady, but swear to God we drove through her. She seemed to turn into fog or something. We finally came to a stop and looked behind us, but nothing was there. We didn't talk the rest of the way to Dean's. I tried to act normal at the party, but that was crazy. Allison and I haven't talked about it yet. I honestly don't know if we ever will. I can't explain what happened. I'd like to think it was a Halloween prank, but that woman straight up disappeared. I'll never get that screaming out of my head. It seems I'm not alone in my experience. I was curious if others had had similar encounters on Old Stage Road, and I was shocked to find multiple accounts very similar to mine. One Redditor said, I grew up hearing the stories about Old Stage Road. In one of my previous stories I posted onto here, I talked about an aunt who had tons of crazy paranormal things happen to her. Being on Old Stage Road was one of them. It was an old country road back then that no one really went on anymore. Salinas, California back in the day was the destination of a lot of horrible deaths and not just gang ones. In the public library, they have photos of people getting lynched on Old Stage Road. May they rest in peace. And it was also where there was a Japanese concentration camp back in the war times. So needless to say, it wouldn't be too surprising if there were some angry spirits roaming around. The road connects you to the main highways. My aunt told me once that years ago, when her and her then husband were driving out of town, they decided to take the back road, Old Stage Road. It was getting dark really fast, and my aunt was pregnant. The events are a little foggy, but she explained that it was dark, she was in the passenger seat, and became tired, so she stared out the window. All she saw was dark images of mountains and trees. Then she said out of nowhere she sees a woman outside, at the same speed as the car, and she turned her head to look at my aunt. The way my aunt's eyes widened and changed when she was describing the woman to me was like she was reliving it all over again in her head. She said the woman's skin was so white it was almost transparent. She looked at least 100 years old with white hair. My aunt said the look the woman had in her eyes was anger and hatred. My aunt screamed and told my uncle to get the heck out of there and to speed up because it's one single road. So he did, and the woman disappeared. He later joked about wanting to go back. They got to their destination and got out of the car. They said on the back windshield there were a bunch of tiny handprints, almost as if there were tons of kids pushing the car. My aunt vowed to never go on that old road again. As I mentioned earlier, I ended up marrying Dean and lived on the property on Old Stage Road for many years, until he passed away in 2015. While living there, I did have many paranormal experiences, but none that were menacing or malevolent. I believe it was because by that time I had learned more about the spirit worlds and how to embrace goodness and light and keep the dark world out. But many people will tell you that Old Stage Road is not a place you want to find yourself after dark. And even though living there wasn't all that bad, every once in a while, in the dead of night, my eyes would pop open upon hearing the undeniable sound of a woman's scream.